News, I'm Rusty Pugh. House Republicans discussing their policy plans for 2025 during their weekly press conference today. House Majority Leader and Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise saying he recently spoke with multiple committee leaders to discuss the party's priorities when President Trump takes office, adding they have already discussed some of the plans they intend to implement.
We're now planning for the policies that we would put in place as a Republican majority with a Republican Senate and the White House under President Trump to get our country back on track, to focus on lowering costs for family at the grocery store, at the gas pump.
President Trump announcing his latest cabinet nomination. Rich Edson reporting from West Palm Beach, Florida.
Trump has selected his transportation secretary nominee, former Wisconsin Congressman Sean Duffy. He would take over from a Biden administration that has faced massive supply chain disruptions as the economy returned from COVID, a train derailment in Ohio, a bridge collapse in Baltimore, and a series of other rail and port challenges. Of Duffy, Trump writes, quote, "He will prioritize excellence, competence, competitiveness, and beauty when rebuilding America's highways, tunnels, bridges, and airports. He will make our skies safe again by eliminating DEI for pilots and air traffic controllers."
President Trump announced last week that he will tap his campaign press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, to be the next White House press secretary. One name that had been mentioned for the job, Trump attorney Alina Habba, says the job just wasn't for her.
I, in fact, spoke with her prior to all of this and said, look, I don't want that job. I never have. It's just everybody has things they want to do in their life and check off. And I love working for President Trump, but not necessarily as the press secretary.
The Coalition of State Attorneys General wants federal lawmakers to pass a bill aimed at protecting kids online. But detractors worry it would prompt censorship. Eben Brown reports.
Attorneys general of both parties from 32 states are now urging Congress to pass the Kids Online Safety Act before year's end. It is intended to mandate more parent and content controls for kids using social media. The bill already passed with more than 90 votes in the U.S. Senate, but its future isn't promising in the House of Representatives, where conservative members fear the bill's language could allow for partisan censorship of online media. A House version of the bill has already passed out of committee. Eben Brown, Fox News.
They may have graduated from high school, but female athletes from Connecticut still have an argument to make against males in female sports. Chris Woodward has more.
Connecticut has long allowed males to compete in female sports, and Selena Soleil, Alana Smith, Chelsea Mitchell, and Ashley Nicoletti argue they lost opportunities having to compete against males. State officials wanted the case dismissed, but as we reported on AFN, a federal court this month in Connecticut allowed this case to move forward. Alliance Defending Freedom attorney Rachel Rouleau.
That policy is still in place, so they can still advocate for women's sports in Connecticut because currently there are still males competing in women's sports in Connecticut. So those girls they said that they had the opportunity to continue, and they should be able to continue with their case because it's still incredibly important that Connecticut's law be changed, and so we're going to continue fighting on that front.
The case is filed as Soleil v. Connecticut Association of Schools. Rouleau says it will spill over into the new year.
Now that we're able to argue it on the merits, we're going to have to go into a discovery process, possibly even a trial. This will take definitely a little bit of time.
I'm Chris Woodward.
And finally, fewer workers say they're thriving, according to a new poll.
Gallup has released its Life Evaluation Index and says 50% of workers surveyed say they're thriving, while 45% say they're struggling. Another 4% say they're suffering. Gallup began measuring how people rate their current and expected future lives in 2009 and says this year's number is an all-time low. The poll of about 10,000 full-time workers also found those who are not thriving experience higher amounts of worry, anger, and employee burnout. 28% of U.S. workers already said they often or always feel burned out at work. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
More news online at afn.net and the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
The loss of a child through abortion, miscarriage, or stillbirth affects the emotional health of families. Feelings of anger, sadness, and regret can be overwhelming. There is hope and healing in the aftermath of a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline at 866-482-LIFE to talk with someone who has been where you are and healed to help others. Your call is confidential. 866-482-LIFE.
We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Glad to have you with me this Tuesday afternoon. Of course, you get Walker Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm with you on Tuesdays and Thursdays when we're not mixing it up just to keep you confused. You want to be a part of the program today? It's 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. I would love to hear from you specifically about whether or not you're hearing the same thing I am from your friends and family with regard to pressing the gas, man. I mean, charge forward. I've been doing this a long time, 3 decades, showing my age here. But I have never seen the energy post-election like what we're seeing right now. I've never seen an appetite from the people. Not the ones that got elected, not the leaders of the various organizations that, folks like me that do this full time, like our whole life, my whole family is all in. I mean, my wife Kara, me, all 4 kids, the 2 daughters-in-law that we have so far. I mean, we're all in, all of us. This is all we do is rebuild the walls, right? Like we are dedicated to rebuilding the foundations in America, and it's all we think about. It's all we put our energy to. It's all we put our money towards. We all have, essentially dedicated ourselves to making pennies compared to what we can make in the regular market and all that. I mean, we're all in. So, of course, for us, post-election, we're just as all in. And we're used to that. But what we're used to having happen is an election happens, and whether the election goes really bad or the election goes really good, most people that we were able to fire up during the election check out. For most people, the election is the Super Bowl, and then they pass out from all the chips and hot sauce and whatever else they had, right? Too much queso. Usually it is really difficult to get people to stay in the fight for at least another year. Man, right now, totally the opposite of that. In fact, they're calling us and saying, "Hey, you guys are pressing the gas, right? Hey, you guys are going to start that new program, or you're going to have plenty of biblical citizenship classes going. Hey, you're going to the campus is open, we can come train, and can I bring a group down to get educated and equipped? And hey, we're already looking at candidates for 2026." I'm hearing that from people that I would have never dreamed I would hear that from. And it is everywhere. So I'm just wondering if you're hearing the same thing. I'm wondering if you're feeling the same thing. Because for me, that's the most encouraging part of this whole thing. I am encouraged by the election results. I am incredibly encouraged by the nominations so far from Donald Trump. I mean, we'll get into that. If you want to call and talk about that, that's fine too. 888-589-8840. But I am most encouraged by the level of intensity and the commitment to follow through from everybody, from the people that already have full-time jobs. They're already trying to coach Little League and raise the kids and run the business or pastor the church or whatever. From the people that don't do this full-time for all the time, those people. Now, you can say average Joe. Well, I'm an average Joe, so I don't even like using that necessarily. But my favorite average Joe is, of course, Coach Joe Kennedy. But anyway, I don't know how to articulate it, folks. I am not speechless very often. All right, usually I am 90 miles an hour, and my wife wants to turn it off. Right, I talk too much. But I am having trouble articulating the level of commitment out there to press the gas. And here's what that means. What that means from a practical results, policy, what's the administration going to look like? What's the state legislative session going to look like in your state? Here's what that means. It means that unlike in past years, the rhino Republicans, the charlatans the politicians that are in it for themselves and all they think about is the next election, those people, they don't get to do business as usual, because think about their normal game plan, right? Normally, business as usual for most of these politicians is to wine and dine us, man. Oh, they romance us in the election. Oh, they tell us everything we want to hear. They promise to do all of these things that we know are needed to save the country. They promise us that they are going to be our answer to everything. And then as soon as the election's over, man, they are whining and dining themselves and the lobbyists and the in crowd in Washington D.C. and in Austin and in wherever your state legislature is, and they sell us out. They sell us down the river, and then they're right back 2 years later, promising, whining and dining, running their commercials with all the money they were able to get while they sold us down the river, talking about how they did all the things they promised us they would do when they didn't actually do them, right? That's business as usual pretty much the whole time I've been involved for the last 30 years. Ain't going to work this time. I really believe they cannot pull it off this time because the people are not falling asleep after the election. The people are still paying attention. The people of this country, of our churches, of our communities, are not going to go to sleep this time. They are, pedal to the metal, pedal to the metal. What's the right way to say that? Anyway, they are pressing the gas, and they are all in all the way through. So this is not going to be business as usual. The John Cornyn's of the world, the people that the Lindsey Grahams, the people that typically get to just brush us off once the election's over because now they got 6 years or 4 years, 2 years, whatever their particular office is. Nope, not this time. Not this time. We are breathing down their necks. We are right there watching everything that they're doing and demanding real change. And the reason that is a perfect storm for what's happening right now is because it's not just that we, the people, are still paying attention and breathing down their necks and we're not going to just let them get away. It's that Trump's team is actually continuing immediately after the election to say and do the things that we had demanded in the first place for the election, but also that we're now expecting. What I mean by that is, and it's just rhetoric right now. I get that. I understand for anybody that's going to call in and say, yeah, but they're just talking a good game or whatever. I get it. That's if it was just the rhetoric of Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and Matt Gaetz and all these people, if it was just the rhetoric of Mike Johnson and all of these folks saying they're going to do all of these things and giving us the red meat that we normally, if it was just that, then I'd be like, very cautiously, slightly optimistic, but been here, been there, done that, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. But it's not just that. It's the combination of the people that Trump is surrounding himself with and the things that they are saying, which in and of themselves would be good because the things that they're saying, honestly, it's better than what we've had in the past. Vivek and these guys, they're actually, Elon, they're selling conservatism really well right now. They're making the argument for why all of these federal agencies are not necessary. They're making the argument for why these federal employees are actually a drain on the culture and the society. They're making the argument for why these agencies that are going to exist should be pushed out into the country somewhere, into the heartland, not stuck in D.C. But they're not just playing the soundbite kind of game. They're actually challenging the premise itself of the presupposition itself of whether or not these agencies should exist in the first place. You see what I'm saying in terms of the difference here? In the past, that rhetoric has maybe been, we need to run the Department of Education better, no child left behind, whatever. Whereas right now the rhetoric is the Department of Education should not exist at all. It's not go in and tinker with it. It's not rearrange the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. It's right the ship. It's throw overboard all of the waste. So the conversation itself is better than it's been in my lifetime, but it's the fact that it's not just these talking heads, it's we the people. It's the folks that are stopping me in the hallway at church. It's the folks that are running out to my car after church to tell me how excited they are to press the gas. It's the people that are calling and saying, what are we doing next? What's next? Let's go. It's the donors that when we call and say, hey, thank you for helping us, get the chamber built at the Patriot Academy campus or whatever it is, that they're saying, hey, what's next? What else can we help with? Hey, what are you guys are going to press the gas, right? You're not going to take a break. You're not going to just coast through the holidays. You're not going to just go into 2025 expecting no. I'm telling you, something is different. There is something different in the air. This is real change. This is a real revolution. Now, I'm not guaranteeing you it's going to happen. That's why I keep saying press the gas, because it will not happen if we go, yay, and then go home. I'm telling you, I'm excited that the elements are there. The pieces of the puzzle are there. The ingredients are there to get this done. When I say done, let me be very careful with those words. I don't think you ever get done with the work that we're talking about here. This is good stewardship, right? So you never get done with this until you're 6 feet under, until we're in heaven, until we're, so it's never that we're actually done. But to accomplish the task at hand, which is to restore federalism, meaning we got to get rid of a ton of these agencies at the federal level, get all that stuff back to the states, except those few things that only the feds can do. Restore federalism, restore the biblical foundations of liberty. Every bit of liberty this nation has enjoyed has come from the fact that we had the seeds sown that were biblically based, that lined up with the laws of nature and nature's God, and therefore, because we did it God's way, the laws of nature and nature's God rewarded us as a nation. Rebuilding those foundations is is our task at hand right now. And so everybody that I'm talking to is saying, stay in the fight, press the gas, let's go. And I have never seen this post-election like what I'm seeing right now. I'm curious if you're seeing and hearing the same thing. Phone number today is 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. When we come back from the break here in a second, we're going to talk about what that means. What do we, when we say press the gas, what exactly are we going to do? I think the president is absolutely pressing the gas. I mean, new recommendation or new nomination every day. Shows up at the UFC fight on Saturday with the Avengers in tow. I mean, it was a sight to see, folks. I know many of you listening are probably not UFC fans. I am. I got friends that fight, and one of my friends, Michael Chandler, was fighting Saturday and didn't win, but put on a great show. And I'm not friends with Johnny Bones Jones, the greatest ever to do UFC, but the guy, man, who's had a very tough life and a rough life, I should say. He's made a lot of really bad decisions, and yet seems to have come back to the Lord, and definitely at least talking about the Lord. And anyway, did the Trump dance, and then turned around and went and handed his belt off to Donald Trump. But anyway, the entrance at the fight Saturday of the Avengers was quite remarkable. I mean, here walks in Dana White, Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, Vivek Ramaswamy. I mean, all these people, all these basically rock stars of the new administration, and they come triumphantly walking in, and that place lost its mind. The welcome of the president and the chants of USA and the feeling of and you're hearing it out there. We're back, man. America's back. It was real. It was palpable. You could absolutely, even just watching it on the screen, and I've been in those arenas for some of those fights. They're high energy, but what I was watching on the screen Saturday told me that was probably the most high energy UFC event in history as the president and his team walked in. And so that really, I guess, was just another example of what I'm trying to get across here, which is that something is different. The culture is leaning our way. And that hasn't happened in my lifetime. The culture is starting to lean our direction. We'll talk about what that means and what you can do about it. Got a lot of people already calling in. If you want to be a part of the show today, 888-589-8840. Quick break here. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. You're listening to At the Core.
You shall have no other gods before me. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. In 1954, Americans lived under constant threat of nuclear attack from the USSR. When America's children practiced duck and cover in classrooms across the country, President Eisenhower realized that our pledge had no distinction from any other republic. After hearing a sermon on February 7th of that year, President Eisenhower signed a law adding the words "under God" to our pledge. The president recognized the true source of unity, of indivisibility, is unwavering submission to the God of the Bible. As we go about our day, let us all remember the only true source of national unity is submission to Almighty God.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association. 80% of the time, an abortion-minded mother who views an ultrasound or sonogram of her baby will choose life. Here's the story of Candace.
The sonogram sealed the deal for me. My baby was like this tiny little spectrum of hope. And I saw his heart beating on the screen. And knowing that there's life growing inside, that sonogram changed my life. I went from just Candace to Mom. Thank you to everybody that has given these gifts. You guys are giving more than money. You guys are giving love.
There are currently preborn centers which do not have an ultrasound machine. Would you sponsor a machine today? Dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Or go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Your love could save a life.
Hello everyone, Tim Wildmon here with American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, in 2025 we have a brand new tour available. It's in October and it's going to Boston. What a wonderful trip this will be to see one of the most significant cities in all of American history. Boston, Lexington, Concord, and the whole story of the Freedom Trail. It's going to be absolutely wonderful. And that's in October of 2025. So we also have the tours of Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon, and then the Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown tours as well. So that's coming up in 2025. If you want to read about any of these, go to wildmangroup.com, WILDMON group.com, wildmangroup.com, for all the information on Boston, D.C., and Williamsburg. Hope to see you on one of these in 2025.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back At the Core. Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach, here with you. And by the way, I was just listening to that spot from Tim Wildmon about the trips out there, Williamsburg and Boston and all that. Hey, folks, if you haven't done that, you need to do that. I'm telling you, there's nothing like walking in the footsteps of the Founding Fathers and getting those stories and being able to just be reminded what they went through to launch freedom in the first place. So anyway, I didn't hear the whole spot, but whatever you do, check that out and consider doing that in 2025. It actually would be a great way to press the gas for you personally, right? Part of what I think keeps me going at a high energy level and at a always pressing the gas is going to some of these historical places, getting to work with young people that are part of that next generation, doing the things that I do. I'm constantly getting reminders of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and so I would recommend you do the same thing. Go to those places, go on that one of those trips with the Wildmans and check out those places because it is incredibly cool. And this year, let's see, what is this? This spring, April, will be the 250th anniversary of Lexington. So when you go to Boston, go do the Freedom Trail, go out to Lexington and stand there on the Lexington Green where the shot heard around the world was fired. And Pastor Jonas Clark, his house is right down the road. You can go tour the house. Anyway, lots of cool stuff. That got me off track because I love that stuff. And by the way, if you can't go, if you just can't get it into your schedule this year, then check out Chasing American Legends. That's our reality series we did several years ago when our kids were younger, and we went to all those places, and we filmed it with comedian Brad Stein, and it's done as a reality show, so it's actually kind of fun. Not kind of fun. It's really fun, and the whole family can watch it. So it's a great way to learn history, get people in your family excited about history. And every episode, it does exactly what I was talking about. It reminds you of why we do what we do, and so it keeps you energized and in the fight. Okay, so let's see. We'll go to the phones just 1 second. Couple other quick thoughts. This whole recess appointment debate that's happening right now. Listen, I got to tell you, I have always been against recess appointments unless it is a true recess appointment, which the Constitution absolutely allows for. The president has the right under the Constitution to do a recess appointment. But the original intent of a recess appointment was if you had an office that was vacated and it's going to be, a significant length of time before Congress gets in to be able to vote on that person, you do a recess appointment and fill that office because it needs to be filled. That was the original intent of why that's in the Constitution. Now, clearly, we live in a different day, and clearly, we live at a time where we are literally in a war right now for our country's heart and soul. Marxism is trying to destroy this country, and the people in Congress that are trying to block the president's appointments, they're on the Marxist side. They're not the good guys. Okay, let's be very clear about that. And I'm talking about the Republicans. As well as the Democrats that don't want the president to have the team that he needs to go save our country, and so I'm softening on the extraordinary measure that the president is asking for here to be able to do these recess appointments. Now, what the president's wanting to do is not just have to avoid have to go in and do the month-long hearings and all that stuff and trying to get these folks appointed. He's also just wanting to have them hit the ground running January 20th. In other words, he's trying to get some of this done in early January so that he can hit the ground running January 20th. Now, this is akin to a time, any point in history where you have such a national emergency that you need the team on the ground to implement immediately. You really don't have the luxury of waiting 2 or 3 months. So I'm going to just say this right up front, and we'll have this conversation here on the program over the next few weeks and leading into January, I'm sure. But I want to have open dialogue on this. I would love your input on this, and I'm probably going to get some experts on to talk about it because I would like to see a strategic, very, very tactical approach to this, but stay constitutional. So in other words, is there a way to put some of these people in place to start getting the job done, but still honor the constitutional intent of the Senate being able to review these people? Now, how do you do that? What would be some ways to do that? Is there a way to appoint, figure out which ones have no objection and get those hearings done even before January 20th if possible? And right off the bat, have everybody ready to go. And then the ones that are controversial and that look like you don't have the votes to get a straight up win in the Senate, then, appoint them to assistant attorney general or whatever it might be, where you don't need the Senate's approval. Don't appoint it to attorney general yet. Have that person be acting attorney general until you can get through that 2-month period or whatever it is. I don't know. I would say get creative. But I am also open, and that's why I am literally just having civil discourse with myself, but with you also, if you want to call in and comment on this. I am also open to extraordinary measures here, and the fact that we are at a point where the DOJ has been completely weaponized and used against the American people, completely unconstitutional. So I don't think you break the Constitution more to fix the Constitution, but I also think you look for any loophole you possibly can where you can, it still is constitutional, but it might be stretching a little bit. And what I mean by that is, obviously all the presidents of the last, I don't know, I haven't gone back and looked at the first one to do it, for at least the last 30 or 40 years, has done exactly what President Trump's talking about, done recess appointments when the Senate wasn't around for the weekend in order to get a judge approved or get, a person into an office. So it's not that he would be doing anything extraordinary from what presidents have done for the last, few decades, and therefore maybe I'm just, being too nitpicky to say that I'm not for it, and that I would rather the full, approval process take place. But I do not want to be. Let me tell you what I don't want to be. I don't want to be like some of my friends in Congress that on January 6th were so uptight and thinking that they're still in a high school debate where everybody's following the rules and playing nice, that they didn't understand what was at stake and did not use the constitutional power they had to object to the electors. I don't want to be that guy at all, and I criticize them for that. And so I think this could turn out to be similar to that, where the recess appointment may be the solution to making sure that the president can step in with his administration and get the job done. Now, in addition to just the process itself, and you've already heard some of the U.S. senators say this, I think Tuberville and some others have already said this. I mean, look, the president won a landslide election, and the president should get the appointments that he wants. The only reason the Senate has this opportunity is to keep somebody that's a real danger to the country, a communist, something like that, from getting in. You look at the absolute clown show jack wagons that these people approved for Barack Obama and for Joe Biden. You look at these absolute nutcases that have been approved and served in the administration for the last 4 years, and you have to say, okay, look, if you let those people through and you approve those people, how in the world can you object to Matt Gaetz? How in the world can you object to Pete Hegseth or Marco Rubio or any of these other guys? And so I guess in the theater of the absurd, at this point, you got to fight fire with fire. So I'm kind of talking myself into this as we go here, and that maybe I'm being the naive Boy Scout by saying in any way that we shouldn't just use every means possible, because I do normally say that, use every means possible. I got to think more about it. I've spoken out against recess appointments for so long that I'm just going to have to reassess this thing. Okay, let's enough about recess appointments. I'm tired of arguing with myself for the day. Let's go to the phones. 888-589-8840. So much good news out there. 888-589-8840. What are you hearing out there? How you feeling? Let's go to, how about Alabama? Frank in Alabama. Roll Tide, brother. You're up first.
Thank you. I'm old, Frank, but my take on it is I'm very familiar with the scripture says Jesus the same yesterday, today, and forever, and so that's where I stand politically. But this AFR that you're on now is that I'm listening to it all day long, and on up in the night. So I'm getting most of their programming. Yeah. And I am thrilled that there are at AFR has an Activate program that they're going to roll out in June, and that is same thing you're kind of doing, with the training. And there's a website that Activate. No, that's that AFR program. But there's a website that SaturateUSA.org. You familiar with it? It's by zip code.
I'm not. I apologize. I should be, I guess, or maybe I've seen it. I'm just not recalling it off the top of my head as you describe it. But that is part of what 2025 is going to be all about, is in local communities, getting the AFA audience to take action in those communities and actually take that ground back by implementing the things that, frankly, we can do now because of Supreme Court decisions like the Coach Kennedy case, because of the air cover that we're now going to have with Donald Trump in the White House, and a DOJ and FBI that's no longer going to be able to have its boot on the neck of pro-lifers and other conservatives. I mean, the things that they have done has been absolutely destructive to the country. And so now we have a chance to go in and make those things right in our communities and get back to building communities based on godly values, the kind of places that you want to raise your kids. And so I think American Family Association is going to be a critical piece of this. Okay, let's go to Jerry in Texas. Jerry, go ahead, man. You're up next.
Hey, brother, give me a minute. I agree there are definitely three-letter agencies that need to be gotten rid of. And I've talked to you before about the Department of Transportation. But here's my thing. Of the department, according to Article 1, Section 8, the government has the right to establish post offices and post roads that I'm reading out of my Constitutional Life
That's right.
book. So that department actually has a purpose. Now, my question is when did it step over the line? Because why do I have to drive a private diesel pickup truck and have DEF in it when mechanics are telling us that additive actually destroys the engine faster?
Yeah.
When did the Department of Transportation move from just infrastructure to dictating what we have to drive, when we have to drive it, where it has to be driven?
Yeah.
That portion needs to be separated and segregated.
Yeah, no, I agree, Jerry. I mean, think about it, man. It's like it would be the only way to compare that to post offices and post roads back in the founding era would be if Congress were to pass something to say you have to use this kind of paper, you have to, you gotta use this kind of pen when you write. You must write in cursive or not in cursive or whatever. That's essentially had they done that, then you could make an argument and say, well, yeah, they would have intended for you to have DEF in your diesel. Total waste of money, total pain. I cannot believe how intrusive the federal government has become. So you're spot on with that. I think there is zero justification for the not only the Department of Transportation, EPA, all of these agencies that are using junk science, and it all comes back to who decides. We're all for, or we should be for, certainly as Christians, we should be for being good stewards of the earth, of our money, of our kids. I mean, good stewards of everything God has put in our hands. And so I think, we're to reign and have dominion. That doesn't mean rape and pillage the earth. It means reign and have dominion. But that means who's going to decide what is actually being good stewardship of the land? It should be the landowner, not the government. It should be the landowner. It should be the car owner. You're the one that should decide. And so this nonsense of how the government now micromanages and intrudes on what you can drive, on how it's going to run, on the features of your car, on all of these different things, it has gone so overboard. Now, I'm not saying there's not a rationale. You could make an argument for certain regulations with regard to, what is a roadworthy vehicle. And, of course, the problem is as soon as you open that door, then now you're going to have these environmental wackos come in and want to do what Gavin Newsom is out there trying to do, get rid of all gas-powered engines, not even allow you to be able to blow leaves in your driveway. These people have gone completely overboard. Absolutely right, Jerry. Good call. Now, this is also where civil discourse is needed and the deliberative process and all of those things. So when I talk about restoring federalism, there are certain things that are very clear. There should be no involvement whatsoever from the government's side of things. That's an individual decision. Healthcare is a perfect example of that. The federal government should have zero say. There is no argument for the federal government to be involved in healthcare at all. None. Zip. Zero. Nada. There shouldn't be a CDC, FDA, none of that. All of that should be at the state level. Now, if you disagree with me, go pass a constitutional amendment and get that added to Article 1, Section 8 that Jerry was talking about. But he's exactly right that the post offices and post road section of Article 1, Section 8 at least opens the door for you to be able to make a decent argument that the interstate system absolutely is an outgrowth of post offices and post roads. You could argue. Now, I'm not sure it makes sense, and I wouldn't vote for it, but you could at least argue for the fact that this whole broadband thing that they have attempted to do in some way, shape, or form is like the post offices and post roads of the day, because instead of delivering mail, we deliver email, and we deliver so much of what we do through the internet. But even if you win that argument and you say, okay, yeah, this could be within the domain, within the jurisdiction of the federal government to make sure that we have that across the country and we're well connected, just like we would have been with post offices and post roads. However, you have to then ask the question, is this the best way to do it? So what I would always do with a piece of legislation when I was in the House, when a bill crossed my desk, the first question, as it should be with any congressman or state legislator or school board member, whoever, is, do I have permission? Do I have authority? Is this within my jurisdiction? And then if it is, then you say, is it working? Well, clearly the broadband thing is not working. They haven't connected anybody, and now Starlink is way easier, way cheaper, and would connect way more people. So even if it's in your domain, federal government, that one makes no sense whatsoever. You have failed miserably at doing it. Therefore, we don't want you to do it anymore. Let's just leave it up to the market. We've proven that the market does it better. Starlink has a much better answer to that than the federal government. All right, I got a little bit out in the weeds there. We'll come back to your phone calls when we return. 888-589-8840 is the phone number. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. You're listening to At the Core.
what we believe about the Bible is based on what we believe about its source.
The God Who Speaks, the award-winning documentary from the American Family Association, is now available in a special limited edition DVD set. This release includes a Sunday school curriculum and 2 hours of additional footage. Go to thegodwhospeaks.org to get your copy today. thegodwhospeaks.org.
The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. We also support the church. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. AFA aims to evangelize the lost and disciple the believer. We aim to strengthen biblical marriages and equip parents to raise godly children.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association.
If you are 65 or older, you know this, inflation is hitting everyone hard right now, especially when it comes to health care. Over the last 10 years, healthcare costs have skyrocketed by, get this, 230%. If you have Medicare Parts A and B, you know there are still out-of-pocket expenses like deductibles and co-payments, and they really add up. But here's some good news. MediShare 65 Plus is designed to fill in those gaps and help protect you from rising healthcare costs. At only $99 per month up to age 75, you get peace of mind at a price you can afford. And MediShare is trusted, too. It's been around 30 years. It's not some big impersonal thing. It's a community of people helping each other, business owners, pastors, retirees. People love it. MediShare 65 Plus just makes sense. To learn more, give them a call. They're great to talk to. They'll offer to pray with you each time you call, too. Call now, 833-45-BIBLE. That's 833-45-BIBLE, 833-45-BIBLE.
Here's today's Dr. Dobson Minute with Dr. James Dobson.
When one child is a stick of dynamite and the other is an all-star sweetheart, the cooperative, gentle one can easily be taken for granted. If there's an unpleasant job to do, he may be expected to do it. What I'm saying is that the compliant boy or girl often comes out on the short end of the stick. Now, the consequences of such inequity should be obvious. The responsible child feels like a loser. He has a sense of powerlessness and resentment that often simmers just below the surface. That's why I strongly recommend that parents seek to balance the scales in dealing with the compliant child. Make sure he gets his fair share of parental attention, and within reason, give him the right to make his own decision. You see, there's nothing simple about raising kids, even in the case of handling the easiest of children. They need our best effort, too.
For more information, visit drdobsonminute.org.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Mark Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. We are talking about pressing the gas, man, after the election and the energy that's out there among people, just the difference in their mindset that they are in the fight for the long haul and they understand what's at stake. They're not just going home after the election, but actually saying, hey, what's next? Let's go, let's go, let's go. Bobby and I were talking, our producer off air, about the fact that you got a couple of great opportunities to measure this. Now, we won't know for a couple of years, but here's some good signs for you to watch in the next 2 years, whether or not that energy stays up. You got a couple of senators, several, that are definitely rhino Republicans, and they've been the kind that have sold us out at critical moments and then, give big speeches, and once in a while they come through for us in some way. John Cornyn of Texas and Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Watch what happens with these guys. If the pressure stays on and they decide not to run again in 2026, or they get a really good Republican challenger and there's a lot of support behind that challenger in the primary, that is a great sign that this is what I was talking about in the first segment, a real revolution, that there really is change coming, and that the groundswell of support was not just for an election, that it really is going to be for an extended period of time to actually rebuild the walls. Now, while we're talking about the senators, there is, of course, all of these guys that are whining and crying about Matt Gaetz being the nominee for Attorney General. And I just want to remind you, here's just a few of these yahoos. Okay, so apparently we got Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Tom Tillis, Joni Ernst, John Cornyn, some of these typical, usual suspects. that are at least signaling that they're going to oppose Matt Gaetz. So I'm just curious. Look, I saw another headline about Merrick Garland. So this is who Matt Gaetz will replace. Okay, this absolute anti-American, anti-parent, anti-Constitution Attorney General that we currently have. So let's not forget Merrick Garland called you a terrorist if you wanted to protect your kid from getting raped in the bathroom at school. Okay, this guy is probably the worst Attorney General in the history of the United States, and I mean that's putting him up against even Eric Holder. This guy gives a speech today. Listen to the hypocrisy of this. He says, I may be coming to the end of my tenure at the Justice Department, but I know that all of you will continue in the department's mission, which has always been its mission, to uphold the rule of law, to keep our country safe, and to protect civil rights. What a liar. What an absolute fraud this man is. This is a man that has jailed American citizens for actually upholding the rule of law, jailed American citizens for living out their civil rights, ruined the lives of the very citizens he says he's out there to protect. And this is a guy that we should look at how these same senators voted for. So Merrick Garland gets nominated to Attorney General by Joe Biden. How did these same senators, the same ones that are now, they're just all in knots about Matt Gaetz. I just don't know if this guy can be the Attorney General of the United States. I don't know if he's qualified to. How did they vote when it came to a man that ends up punishing the American people, jailing his political opponents, and being essentially the Gestapo henchman leader for the Democrat machine that went full-on communist over the last 4 years? How did they vote on this guy? I mean, if they're going to stand up against anybody, it ought to be this guy. Well, let's see. Who was the first one I named? Let's see. Let's go Susan Collins. Susan Collins, who has a problem with Matt Gaetz. Let's see how Susan Collins. Let's go back here. I'm just going back to this was March 10th, 2021. Senate is voting on Merrick Garland to be the Attorney General of the United States. And now I'm just going in. Let's see, go alphabetical order here. Let's see, Blunt, Booker, Boozman, Braun, Cantwell, Collins. Oh, here she is, Collins, Republican of Maine. She votes yes for Merrick Garland. She votes for the Gestapo henchman to be the head of the Department of Justice, but she got a problem with Matt Gaetz. How about Lisa Murkowski? Here's Lisa Murkowski, of course, only a senator because of who her dad was. Still a senator because they, manipulated the election process out there in Alaska to keep her in the Senate. Let's see, Lisa Murkowski. How did she vote on Attorney General for the Gestapo henchman to take over the Department of Justice? Murkowski. Marshall, McConnell, Menendez, Merkley, Moran. Moran, I'm sorry. Murkowski. Here it is. Yes for Merrick Garland. Murkowski's a yes for the Gestapo henchman to head the Department of Justice. Okay, let's see. How about Tom Tillis? Tom Tillis of North Carolina has a, not sure that Matt Gaetz should be the Attorney General of the United States. Murkowski said it this way. I don't think it's a serious nomination for the Attorney General. Oh, but Merrick Garland was. Merrick Garland, the Gestapo henchman, was the serious. Let's see, Tom Tillis. Okay, we got Sullivan, Tester, Thune, Tillis. A yes on Merrick Garland. Now, there were 30 Republicans that said no. All right, Ted Cruz said no. I mean, who are the guys you look to, to figure out, okay, was this a good vote or a bad vote? I mean, was there any opposition whatsoever? Marsha Blackburn said no to the Gestapo henchman. Even Boozman from Arkansas, who is once in a while with us, once in a while, most of the time not on the tough votes. He was a no. Let's see, Ted Cruz, of course, a no. Let's see, who else was a no? You got, of course, Rand Paul was a no. You got Mike Lee was a no. I mean, these are the guys that you look to. They're all voting no. Why can't Murkowski and Tillis? And how about Joni Ernst? Let's see. Joni Ernst doesn't like Matt Gaetz being the nominee. Let's see. Duckworth, Durbin, Ernst. Yep, she votes with Durbin, Democrat of Illinois, of course, a yes. Now, I understand. John Thune, also a yes. John Thune voted for Merrick Garland, the Gestapo henchman, to be the Attorney General of the United States. So, Senator Thune, all right, chips are on the table. The gauntlet has been thrown down. You are now the majority leader. What are you going to do for Attorney General? Are you going to block President Trump's choice or are you going to support President Trump's choice? Are you going to help get this nomination through? And by the way, of course, John, the ultimate rhino Cornyn, voted yes for the Gestapo henchman to lead the Department of Justice. Folks, this is the hypocrisy of these people. Let's see, I forgot to check Lindsey Graham. Let's see, Graham, where are you, Graham? I got, let's see, Gillibrand, Graham. Oh, of course Lindsey Graham was a yes for the Gestapo henchman. Of course he was. What's he going to do on Matt Gaetz? That's going to be a great test, folks. Oh, we got a couple of months to build up the momentum on this thing. It's going to be really, really interesting to see what these guys do. All right, I'm calling myself, I guess, because we got a Rick from Texas calling in. So Rick from Texas, this is also Rick from Texas. Welcome to the program, man. Go ahead.
Hi, Rick. It's a pleasure listening to you.
Hey, what part of Texas are you in, by the way?
Yeah, I'm say that one more time.
I was asking what part of Texas you're from.
Hopkins County, Sulphur Springs.
All right, man. I used to drive through Sulphur Springs like every other week because we'd go to Little Rock and back to Dallas, and had a lot of family still in. Anyway, go ahead, man. I'm sorry. I digress. Played a playoff game in high school, by the way, in baseball in Sulphur Springs. Okay, I'm sorry. I get in the weeds.
That's great. I'm from Mesquite originally, but anyway.
Yeah. They still got really Poteet Field out there in Mesquite? Poteet High School?
I built Poteet High School.
No, come on, man. Did you really?
I did. And most of West Mesquite, first three phases.
Wow.
Went to Old Mesquite, though.
Yeah, I played my first playoff game when I was a freshman. We played a playoff game at Poteet. Yeah, I wasn't a starter that year, but I did get put in to run the bases and got put in to pinch run for a guy, and I'm standing on first base, and the first base coach's first words to me, I'm a freshman, deer in the headlights, scared to death. I mean, I'm getting to play varsity, but still. And he looks at me and goes, "Don't wet your britches, boy." Anyway, all right, Rick, go ahead, man. I know you didn't call in to talk about Poteet High School, but it was a turf field too, I think, if I remember right. First time I played on one. Go ahead.
That's not sand that you're running on either. It's walnut shells and stuff. But anyway, we'll talk about that some other time. Listen,
I didn't know that.
You're bringing the fire on these senators, and I want to add to that.
Yeah.
And let's just get this started right now, because I don't ever hear anybody talking about it. Here's where we start. Repeal the 17th Amendment.
Oh, amen, brother.
That's the one that took the senators out of the purview of the people of the state they represent. And that's why John Cornyn and all the rest of them don't give one flip about the people back home, except those few weeks around when they're trying to get elected.
You're so right, Rick. You're so right, man. And all of our Patriot Academy Constitution classes, Biblical Citizenship in Modern America, Constitutional Live, Constitutional Defense, all of them. I say exactly what you just said because I couldn't agree more. I call it the second worst amendment to the Constitution, the 17th, and it does exactly what you're saying. It used to be, in the original design of our country, the founders were wise enough to give us a House of Representatives that would be represented by the people. They would go home every 2 years, get reelected. And then for the Senate, they were going to be elected by the legislatures so that the states themselves would have the ability to stop the federal government from encroaching upon the state's jurisdiction and authority. And it was a fantastic check and balance to keep the feds from growing outside of its proper jurisdiction. And if you look at the growth of the federal government since 1913, which is when the 17th Amendment was put in, the growth of the federal government was like a hockey stick curve. It exploded because we stopped having that check and balance on Congress. Now, your U.S. Senator comes home and promises the bacon, man. I'll get $1 million for the library. I'll get $100 million for this. I'll make this happen. I'll make that happen. And they get all these promises, and then they go spend money like a drunken sailor. Well, drunken sailors at least spend their own money. These guys spend our money. Anyway, the senators started doing exactly what the House members were doing. In the past, if the U.S. Senate, like when I was in the House, in the State House in Texas, if the U.S. senators had tried to create the Department of Agriculture, we would have called them and said, hey, we've got a Department of Agriculture in Texas and Arkansas and everywhere else. We don't need one at the federal level. If you do that, you're out of a job as a U.S. Senator because we, the legislators, choose the U.S. Senator. Can't do that anymore. They don't have that ability anymore. So you get, like Big John Cornyn, and he sells us out 15 years ago. He's been selling us out for 2 decades. But holding him accountable has been incredibly difficult because he sells us out behind the scenes. And then he comes home and he's got 20, 30, 40, $50 million from all the Washington lobbyists, and he floods the airwaves in Texas. And so average Joe Republican voter thinks, wow, John Cornyn, he's a Second Amendment guy. John Cornyn, he's a pro-life guy. John Cornyn, and they think that he's fighting for the people of Texas and our values, when in fact he's undermining us every step of the way. And that's the problem with the 17th Amendment. Rick from Texas, you are spot on, man. No wonder you got a great name from a great state. I know some other Ricks from Texas. Anyway, let's go back to the phone. That was a great point. Repeal the 17th Amendment. That's another reason we need a convention of states. We need to get the states to come together and do the amendment process on their own. They don't need Congress. They don't need Washington involved in this. The states can and should do this. That is the break glass in case of emergency clause in the Constitution, and the emergency is absolutely upon us. Just look at the ridiculous debt that we have. We're stealing from our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and the only way we're going to stop that nonsense is not by electing Donald Trump. We're going to get some stopgap measures here, some Band-Aids, but if we're going to solve the problem, we've got to have a convention of states and amend the Constitution to right the ship, to put the feds back in their box and only allow them to do those 17 things they're supposed to be doing, ironically the same number, and repeal the 17th Amendment so it's more it's possible to hold them accountable after we have those amendments in there. Anyway, well, I don't want to go too far off down that road because I can talk about that one all day long. Let's go to, let's see, Pamela. Let's go all the way to California. Pamela's in California. You're up next, Pamela. Go ahead.
Hi, Rick. My name's Pamela, as you just said. I'm from San Diego County. I live in North County, San Diego, however.
All right.
It's all Trump County up here. Anyway, sir.
By the way, I love Awaken Church out there. I love going out and speaking. I've been to almost every campus out there. Love those guys. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, that's so great. Yes, the Awaken's growing like crazy all over. Anyway, so I would like to ask you if you could speak on what's going on here in California with the continued counting ballots. And Gavin. And so, I go on Instagram and I have a little bit of social media, tabloid. I find out a little bit of my news on social media. However, I'm seeing a lot of worrying about, what's going to these people winning and taking over, the Democrats winning and taking over some seats, perhaps from the House or the Senate.
As far as I know, Pamela, there are only two reasons to still be counting ballots 2 weeks after an election. One is you have such a close election that you need to do a hand recount of paper ballots. That's the way it should be. And that takes time. And so I can understand if that's what is being done and both sides are there and you have transparency and you have verification processes and you have legal remedies to make sure it's done right. 100% support that. That's how I got elected the first time. Lost on election night by 20 votes. So close, out of 30,000, had to have a recount. That's not what they're doing, though. You're right, Pamela. You know what they're doing? They're cheating. I mean, that's all this is. This is fraud. They are cheating right before our eyes. They're not just doing it in California. They're doing it in several states. And we have to put a stop to this nonsense. Now, the only way we're going to stop that, true election integrity, is paper ballots and absolutely having a hand count and a verification process so that if either side says, the other side cheated, we want to verify, you can go in and put your hands on those ballots and verify. We got to get to that, folks. It's going to take time. California will probably be the last one to do it because they like being able to cheat out there, and Democrats love stealing elections. Okay, I said it. Sue me if you want. Thanks for listening, folks. You've been listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
The Stand provides a Christian perspective on